And in this tutorial I will present the generation of a crack surface using Abaqus. So first let's set the Abaqus working directory, which is already done. Then we click OK, and now let's check the tutorial. So we have to import or define the geometry for each part. So in this case we have to define the crack surface and the crack front. There are several options to do that. The one that I choose was to create the geometry using a CAD file, and then I'll import the geometry into Abaqus. So let's click on File, Import, Part, Crack Front. Now we have the crack front here. Import, Part, Crack Surface. Now we have the crack surface and the crack front imported into Abaqus. Now let's go to Assembly and click on Create Instance. We select the two parts. Then we click on Independent because we will like to mesh an instance, and then we click on OK. And now we have created the instance representing the crack surface. Something that I would like to point out is that we have to double check that we are using the same coordinate system as the one that we used to generate the global, meso, and local models. So next we go to Mesh, and now we would like to mesh the crack surface. So we first click on Assembly. Let's hide the crack surface. Let's focus on the crack front first. So we click on Seed Edges. We select the crack front. We click on Done. And we specify the number of elements that we would like to have along the crack front. In this case, I will use 32. Let's click on OK. And then finally click on Mesh Part. Done. Now let's do the same procedure for the crack surface. So in this case we have to specify or assign a mesh control. So we click the surface, then we select triangular, we click OK, and now we would like to assign a seed to the edge with the same number of elements that we used for the crack front. So in this case, this is the surface edge associated with the crack front. So we select this edge, and we specify 32 as well. So we click on OK, and now we can mesh the crack surface. As you can see, we have the same number of elements for the crack surface and for the crack front. Next, we go back to Assembly and we click on Merge Instances. We select Merge Mesh, delete original instances, and merge nodes all. Then we have to remove duplicated elements or nodes, and we have to specify a tolerance value. So then we click on Continue, and we select the crack front and the crack surface. We click on Done, and as you can see, these are the duplicated nodes because we had nodes for the crack front and nodes for the crack surface that were on the same geometric position. So what we are doing right now is we are merging those nodes. We are deleting duplicated nodes. So then we check that we have all the nodes highlighted, and then we click on yes. Finally, we go to job. We create a new job. Click on continue. OK. And finally, right click on the job name and click on write input. This is a message saying that we haven't assigned any section to these shell elements, but that's not a problem because this is not an actual model. This is only a crack surface representation. So we click on yes. And the job input file has been written to the work directory. This is the Abaqus input file that contains the crack surface representation. We have the nodes, and we have beam elements representing the crack front, and we also have triangular shell elements representing the crack surface. And that's all that we need. The crack surface conversion from Abaqus to ISET format. So the step number one is in the case that Abaqus input file was generated in Windows, we recommend copy and paste the content of the input file to a new file with the same extension. This is needed to delete any special character that might have been generated and might cause troubles during the conversion process. So in this case, I already did it. And this is the Abaqus input file that contains the crack surface representation. And it looks something like this. We have the nodes. We have beam elements representing the crack front. And we have triangular shell elements representing the crack surface. So now let's open a terminal window and use the following command. Converter. And we have to choose option number 5, which is convert a crack mesh from Abaqus to ISET. Then we have to type the name of the Abaqus input file. And we hit enter. The process was done, and the converter generated this crack.crf file, which contains the crack surface representation in ISET format. We have the nodes, we have crack edge 2, which represents the crack front, and we have crack 3, which represents the crack surface. And that's all that we need.